Let's make some little apple critters. Whenever I'm making something with polymer clay, I like to start by sketching out a design on my iPad, just so I have a reference of the colors and shapes and everything for what I want to make. I then like to print out my design so I can keep my reference at my work table without having to find space for my iPad or stare at a screen. Before I start crafting, I set up my work table. Polymer clay is really sticky and any dust or hair around in the area will stick to it. So I like to start with a clean surface and I work from these ceramic tiles. I also have this, which is basically just a pasta roller, but for polymer clay. This helps me mix the colors very quickly and easily. To start, I'll be mixing 2 colors. There are only 3 colors of polymer clay needed for the apple critters. I will be mixing a green color for the body and a yellowish green color for the apple. I don't use red clay for sculpting the apples, and you'll see why later. I will also use a brown clay, but I've already mixed that one. My favorite clay to use is this Cernit translucent clay. I just really love the slight translucent look it gives to the pieces that I make with this. I also almost never use colored clay straight from the package. The colors are just so pigmented, it's not necessary. I find a little goes a long way, and I'll usually mix a very small amount of it with translucent clay or white clay to get whatever color I'm going for. I weigh each piece of clay so that all the apples will be uniform in size, and then I roll out the balls to form the shapes of the head and body. I then roll the legs. Here I'm making the straps for the pouches that the apples are carrying. I wanted the pouches to kind of resemble a seed, so I use a toothbrush and knife just to add some texture. To create the apple shape, I use this dotting tool to create the dip at the top of the apple. And here's why I don't use red clay for the apples. I brush on red chalk pastel before baking. I find this gives the apples a more realistic look and texture, and gives them the sort of stripy look that real apples have. I then add the facial features, which I use with tiny pieces of clay. I find this gives me more control and allows me to fix things if I mess up, which I wouldn't be able to do if I painted the features on after baking. I then add a leaf and a stem to the top, and now we have the apple heads. I shape the body and cut the top off so it will adhere better to the clay. I then add a thin strip of brown to create the strap for the pouch, and then I add the pouch. I add the arms, and then I add dimples where the legs will go. And I add a butt crack, just because I find it makes them look cute and fun. Next, the apples will go into the oven to cure. You can see after baking, the clay is now slightly translucent, which will be even more obvious once they're glazed. To finish these critters, I add a thin coat of varathane. I paint this on with a brush and let it dry for about an hour before adding a second coat, and then sometimes I'll add a third coat as well. And now they hang to dry. And here's what they look like now that they're done. The varathane gives it a nice shiny finish and keeps it durable. These guys will be available as keychains on my shop. I've become really obsessed with making physical art lately, and I want to keep making the rest of the designs that I showed earlier in this video. So which one should I make next?